Hi everyone, and welcome to today's webinar, which is a full product walkthrough of Xray Cloud. First, we're going to share a brief introduction to Xray, including the main concepts and workflows, and then Helder is going to deep dive into a full product walkthrough of Xray Cloud and take you through the entire lifecycle of how to specify, organize, plan, and execute tests using Xray. We'll also explore Xray's powerful reporting capabilities and show you how you can make the most of them using Xray's dashboards and gadgets.
In the context of the software development lifecycle, Jira is an awesome tool that provides you with requirement and defect management. However, it does lack effective test management capabilities, and that is precisely where Xray comes in. So, what is Xray? Well, basically, it is a test management application specifically designed for Jira that is available for data center, server, as well as cloud Jira instances. Today, we'll be looking at the cloud version, but basically they all have the same features and functionality. Xray supports both manual and automated tests while allowing you to organize and plan your tests. It also allows you to execute tests directly from within Xray. Now, I do have an asterisk here since automated tests are typically executed by your automation framework, after which the results are pushed back into Xray. You can also create Jira defects directly from within the application. In addition, Xray provides you with top-notch quality assurance reporting capabilities, as well as a REST API or and GraphQL interfaces that you can use to connect to your external systems. Do note that for some of the most commonly used CI/CD tools, plugins are available to ease this integration process even further. Now, if we take a look at your typical QA workflow, and there are variations to this, of course, you write your tests, you organize them, you plan them, and then you go ahead and execute these. Now, when you subscribe to Xray, Xray will set up the following issue types that you can use within projects that are enabled with Xray. Test case and precondition, which you can consider to map onto writing your tests. Test sets for organizational purposes, test plans, for your planning needs, and then test execution and subtest execution when you want to execute or run the tests. Now, all of these, with the exception of test repository and test run, are in fact also Jira issues. This means that you get all the already great features that Jira already provides you with. For example, if you want to implement some type of access control, that's done with Jira permission schemes, and you do that as you would for any other type of Jira issue type. Maybe you want to implement some specific workflow. That's also done at the Jira level. And since these are also Jira issue types, in fact, you would do that operation as you would for any other type of Jira issue type. Now, test cases typically cover user requirements, which in an agile world you can consider as stories that may roll up into epics, but do rest assured that Xray can cover any type of Jira issue as an issue to be covered by tests. It's just a matter of configuration there. So let's move along and have a look at test case specification. And for this, I'll be using my demo instance where I have a story, which basically is a requirement where a user must be able to view product and pricing information in our Xray website. And I will be testing this requirement or story with three types of tests: a manual test case, a BDD test case, which I will automate, and also a generic instructor type of test, also an automated test. Now, all of these are linked to the story using standard Jira link issues. So let me open up my Jira Cloud instance. And this particular project I have already enabled with Xray, which means that I will see a testing board side menu here, which will take you to further features and functionality of Xray. And this is the story that we were looking at just a little while ago. So if I open this up, well, let me open this up in a different tab so we have a bit more screen real estate. And first of all, I've configured this particular project to treat, for Xray to treat the story issue type as an issue to be covered by tests. And Xray will basically add the test coverage pane, which we'll look at just a little while. You will see that This particular story is being tested by these three tests that we just saw in the slide set. Now, scrolling down, I do see that the test coverage pane also shows me those tests, but it also shows the current execution status, where overall the tests, the execution status is considered not okay. We have actually 4 different statuses that come out of the box. You can create your own based on these. These are not okay, meaning that at least one of the tests has failed. Okay, meaning that all of the tests have passed. Not run, some of the tests have not yet been executed, and also uncovered, which basically means that there are no tests that are being used to cover that story. We can also change the scope here. So if I wanted to check the execution status against a specific test environment, and test environments are also created at the project level. And let's say I want to check how these execution results are stacking up against a Chrome test environment. Well, I can see that currently it's considered not run. And why is this? Because I have not executed any of these tests where I've specified precisely that I'm testing the Chrome test environment. Now, let me open up these test cases so that you can have a look at their specification. And we'll start off with the the manual test case here. And the first thing that you'll notice is that a test case specification looks a lot like any other Jira issue, and that's because it is a Jira issue. You'll certainly recognize this. This is a standard Jira. You have your standard workflow. Any operation that you can carry out with a Jira issue type, you can also carry out for a test case specification. Now, if I scroll down a bit here, I see that this manual test case is being used to test that specific story that we were just looking at. If I look at the test details section here, we do see that it is of a manual test type where I have, in this case, 3 test steps with action data and expected result. You can also add more columns to this. It's just a matter of configuration. Also, you can even call other test cases or use data sets, which allows you for parameterized test cases. And if we have a look at preconditions, do we have any preconditions associated to this test case? No, there are none. Does it belong to any test set? Not at the moment. Does it belong to any test plans? Actually, this test belongs to 2 different test plans. And does it have any test runs at the moment? No, it doesn't. We'll also be looking at these in more detail in just a little while. Let's now have a look at the BDD type of test, and I'll also open that up in a different tab here. And same type of structure as we saw for the manual test case. The only difference here is that in the test details section, we do see that it is defined as Cucumber, or well, Cucumber for historical reasons. It is a BDD test case. And what I have here is a scenario outline that I will be using to generate feature files, which will be used by my automation framework. And that will, I will then run the tests and then push the results back into Xray. You can also have external repositories as your master repositories. Just means the pipeline will have to be set up differently, but that's also perfectly fine. If we look at the last test that Xray is able to support, and this is a generic Instructor type of test. Let's have a look at this one. Same type of structure as we saw in the previous test case specifications. The only difference here is that this test case is considered generic, means that we do not have the actual specification. The specification or the logic for that test is for this test is elsewhere. It's probably in your source code, in your script files, but Xray in this case does need a unique definition that it will use to map existing or execution results that are pushed into Xray. It will look for this definition. If it finds it, then it will basically add a new entry to the execution log here, where you can then go and have a look at the test execution details. If it does not find that specific definition, Xray will actually create the test case for you and add the new test run. So for generic and structured types of tests, it's actually easier just to push the results, execution results into Xray, and Xray will automatically create the test cases for you. Let's move along. and have a look at the next item on our agenda, which is test case organization. And for this, Xray will have all its test cases within an internal structure, which is a test repository. It is a tree-like structure, and we'll have a look at that in just a little while. You can also organize test cases using test sets. Now, test repository and test run is what Xray provides you out of the box for test case organization, but you are free to use any other type of organization scheme, such as Jira labels and so forth, because remember that the Xray issue types are in fact also Jira issue types. And in order to, let me switch back over to my Jira instance. In order to view the test repository, this is where you will access the testing board here, side menu. If I click it there, then I will see the repository. Now, this is, of course, a demo project. I only have 30 tests within it. I've grouped them according to this directory structure here. I can have a look at all my test cases by simply scrolling up and down. Since I only have 30 tests, this is quite simple here, but you would most likely have thousands of test cases. So you'd probably do some type of searching, for example, visitor, and you see all the test cases that obey this condition. Or maybe you'd probably want to filter out according to different fields that we have here, or even fine tune these using JQL. So let me get rid of this filter there. Now, the other thing that I mentioned is that you can also create test cases for this. This is how you'd simply do it. For example, let me just say that I want to have a look at my demo directory and pick out a few test cases that I have here, and I want to create a test set for this. I'd basically create a test set here. This will automatically create the test cases with these tests. And let me just say that's demo test set. Okay, I'm not going to put anything else in here and just create that. So I've created that test set, and when I go into that test set, once again, a test set is like any other Jira issue. I will see that I have the 3 test cases in that test set. Moving over to test planning and execution, and this is actually where all the fun starts. If you need to plan your tests, and most customers do this, they create a test plan. And I've added a couple of billiard balls here to identify these tests so I don't have lines all over the place here. But all you have to do after creating a test plan is basically link those tests to that test plan. From there, when you want to execute test cases, you can create a test execution directly from within the test plan. And you can place in that execution any test cases, a subset or all of them if you want. Now, a test execution is extremely important, and it is mandatory when using Xray, since a test execution is where you also specify additional information regarding the context of your tests. Maybe it's a specific test environment that you're using, or a specific version that you're testing. So that is done at the test execution level and not at the test case specification, leaving the test cases agnostic to this and making their reuse a lot simpler. You can bypass test plans altogether, and for this, you just create a test execution and link any test cases that you want to that. So a test plan is very useful, but it is not obligatory, and you can simply just create test executions and carry on from there. So let's see all of this in action. And for this, I'll choose a different tab here, go directly into the testing board here, which will take me to the test repository. Now, what I'm going to do here is just select the 3 test cases that I just showed you. They're all in my demo directory here, since this is where I store them for demo purposes. And I'm going to choose the manual test, also the BDD test, and that generic instructor type of test that we were looking at. And from here, what I'm going to do is either create a test plan or add them to an existing test plan. I'm going to add them to a test plan because I already have this test plan configured in my CI/CD environment to save a bit of time later on when I show you that. So I'm going to select test plan here. Once again, You can start typing in, you can search according to different Jira fields or use JQL to fine tune and search for those test plans. Since all of these start with the keyword demo, this is a test plan that we're looking for, and I'm going to add those 3 tests. And basically, I've added these 3 tests to that test plan. They're already there, but there's no harm in adding them again. Now let's go ahead and run these tests. Do remember that I can create a test execution directly from within the test repository, place the test that I want, or link the test that I want to that test execution. This would be considered an ad hoc test. But what I'm going to do here is create a test execution directly from the test plan. For that, I'm going to the testing board here once again. And I'm going to select this pull-out menu, which takes me to additional features of Xray, such as viewing the reports, test case importer if you want to import tests in bulk, and I'll just go into the test plan. This takes me to the last test plan I visited. Incidentally, it's the same one where we linked those test cases to. Within the test plan, you will see that I'm also able to organize test cases according to a directory structure that I define. I can also switch to flat view and I see an overall execution status, but also the execution status for the tests, but grouped according to this directory structure that I've created. Now, remember those 3 tests that I did create? Well, that I showed you and that I linked to this test plan? Well, basically here, I'm just going to reorganize this, place also the manual test there. I don't have to do this, but just to show you how simple it is, and also place the automated tests there. So what I'm going to do here is directly from the test plan, I'm going to create a test execution with these 2 manual tests. Okay, all I have to do is create execution, give it a name, of course. I can add additional information regarding this particular test case execution, such as the fixed version, for example. Let's say we're testing version 1, and I'm going to go ahead and create that test execution. So if we dive into that test execution, we will see that, once again, very similar to any other Jira issue type, and we see the 2 tests that I've placed within this particular execution. I don't think I added a test environment. You don't have to do this, but since what they also show you this, I'm going to say that I'm going to be testing my Chrome test environment. And in order to run these tests, the only thing that you really have to do is hit that execute button here. I'll run the test that I showed you there and create a test run. I am in the test run screen at the moment. It hasn't been initiated, so everything is still it's still not filled in. But nonetheless, what I see here is that I do have a timer which hasn't started yet. The current execution status is still in the to-do state. It's not being executed by anyone. I'm going to pretend I'm a tester. I have my browser beside me, and I'm going to run these 3 test steps that we saw in the test case specification. It's asking me to access the Xray site, make sure the site is accessible. I'm going to say yes, it is accessible. So I've passed my first step. If I scroll back up to the top, you will see that the timer has now commenced. Any report that I generate will show this up as being in the execution state, and it's being executed by myself. Now let's move over to step 2 and pretend we have some problems here. It's asking me to click on the products of the Xray test management menu. Maybe I'm unable to do so. So what I can do is already place some comments. Unable to access menu. Okay. So I've inserted a comment. Maybe your policies oblige you to provide some type of evidence, maybe attach a file, maybe a log file of your testing APIs or so forth. I'm just going to grab a screenshot or partial screenshot and say that this button here is preventing me from accessing that. Let me get this out of the way. And all I have to do is just paste it directly into the screen. It was in my clipboard. And Xray will attach it to the overall evidence, but I can actually be more precise and say it belongs to step 2. So I've not only added a comment, I've also attached some type of evidence here. And now when configuring Xray, you can also declare which Jira issue type you want Xray to consider as a defect issue type. I've already selected the bug issue type. It's a Jira issue, not an Xray issue, but Xray will pre-fill some information in that issue if you decide to create it. Of course, you can link it to existing defects. We'll create one from scratch. Xray already knows that I want to create a bug, give it a name here. Here is some information that it is pre-filling. I'm just going to show you that in a nicer format. All the steps that I've carried out up to and including the step where I'm raising the defect from, this will allow or ease the process of recreating the error. And I'm just going to go ahead and create it. Okay, now you could pass this and continue on. Maybe what you found has nothing to do with what you're trying to test, but you just want to log it. But I'm going to fail it. Now, failing a test step, oh, forgot to click it, there we go. Failing a test step dictates that the test case has also failed, or the test execution has failed. So if we go back to the execution here, we will now see that this particular execution, which had two tests, if you remember, because I did have two tests, one of them is already failing, and that will also show up in the test plan afterwards. By the way, if you also go back to the requirement itself, you'll also see that we already have a bug that has been created here, and also that we have a failed test step. Let me just check if we were looking at the exactly Chrome test environment. So basically reflects the execution that we just carried out. Now let's quickly see how we can run that BDD test case that I showed you during the test case specification phase. And for this, I'll be using Jenkins. Remember that for Jenkins, we do have plugins that you can use to facilitate the integration. If you're not using any CI/CD tool that we have plugins for, you'll have to use the APIs directly, but they're very easy to use nonetheless. So looking at this job, let me just show you how I've set up this particular configuration. It's a simple case here. I'm checking out the source that will implement the Gherkin test steps. I'm then grabbing this particular issue. I could also use filters here, but I'm grabbing this issue or this test case, which is 1607. Remember, 1607 is this cucumber test here, and it generates a feature file that I will use. In this case, I'm using behave to run those test steps. So let me go ahead and force this build here. And what it is currently doing is it is grabbing or fetching the feature file from Xray for that particular issue. It is running behave on it, and then it's pushing the results back into Xray. So if we have a look at this particular result file, not result file, but the log, we will see that it created, I already know what this stands for, do not worry, a new issue, which is 1638. Now, I can see the execution result in the test plan because I associated that to the test plan, but nonetheless, in this particular case, let's have a look at it directly within the test case itself. So if I go to test runs, I will see that I now have a new execution that was pushed in. So 508, 508, 1709, same thing. Probably will be a different time when you watch this, but nonetheless, let's have a look at the execution results. And for this, I get taken to a test run screen, very similar to the one we saw just a little while ago for the manual tests. However, in this case, it's showing me the scenario outline that was executed and the results for each one of these test cases, each one of these statements. And since I'm using a scenario here, it's running through all these different topics here. So it's basically looking for this information within my Xray site. Okay. So let's run that final test that I showed you, which is the unstructured generic test. For this, I'll be going back to my Jenkins environment. This is a test that I want to show you. Let me show the configuration here. Once again, I'm basically checking out from my Git repository, running robot on the files that were checked out, and then I'm using a post-build plugin here, which is pushing the results in the cloud using robot XML. We do support quite a number of other formats, as you can see here, and they are very well detailed in our online documentation, which you can consult afterwards. Nonetheless, I'm associating this test execution to that test plan that we were looking at. I'm also specifying that I'm testing version 1, not even specifying a test environment. Well, let's go ahead and force the build here, okay? So here's robot bringing up my Chrome, or Selenium, invoking Selenium to bring up Chrome, testing for the pricing information that I'm looking for, and then it's pushing the results back into Xray. If we go back into Xray then, and let me go to the testing board. This is the test that we were looking at. If I just open this up in a different tab here, we will see that we should have a new execution, and we've already looked at this test. Remember the test details here where we have a specific definition. If we go into the test runs, we will see a new test here. And if I look at the details, I will see here that I do have the test execution. It failed because it did not find the pricing information. It also provided me with a screenshot because that's what I indicated within the robot scripts. And that's how simple it is to manage your tests within Xray. Now, continuing on, let's have a look at reporting and gadgets, a very important aspect of quality assurance. And Xray supports three types of tests. Built-in reports, which include overall coverage, traceability plans, metrics, executions, and test runs. User-defined reports, this is a very powerful tool. It is based on templates in which you use code snippets to generate either Word, Excel, or PDF documents. And this allows you to generate reports in the format that you want, with the content that you want, with the layout that you want, and so forth. And final but not least, we do also have gadgets that you can include in your dashboards. They are all configurable with Jira filters. You can group them, they're customizable for using test environments, test plans, versions, and so forth. Let's have a look at some of these reports. For this, I'll be moving over to my Jira instance again. Let me choose a different tab here. And to access the built-in reports, you do go through the testing board here. You do have a pull-out, pull-down menu as we've seen before. And here are the built-in reports. Let me start off with the test coverage report. And you can filter out according to your needs here using a filter that we've seen already at the story level. You can filter according to different Jira fields. You can group these according to priority, status, resolution components, and other custom fields. Let's group this according to using components and just generate the report without any further filtering. Very simple yet very powerful report. What do we see here? We see that, for example, for my account components, I do have three issues or stories which are passing out their tests, two which have tests which have not been executed yet, and one which is completely uncovered by test cases. We can drill down here. For example, if I choose this one, we can see that both of these requirements or stories are considered not okay. And why is that? Because they have failed tests. So this is one easy way to pick out already or get an overall execution status for your requirements. Of course, I'm not going to go through all the reports here, but as you go down the list, you get finer grained reports. For example, this test run list report here will basically list all the individual test runs that were carried out, how long they took, if they involved specific components, specific test environments, and so forth. Now, if we look at another type of built-in report, which is traceability, actually one of my favorite types of report, you can also filter out data here or your report. I'm just going to generate that report for you and see what we have here. Now, this is the issue that we were looking at. It is considered not okay, and why is that? Well, simply because remember the manual test that we did carry out, where we failed it and we did raise a defect. You get complete traceability here from the defect to the test run to the test itself, overall to the issue that you're testing. We also see the results for the automated tests that we carried out, the generic constructor type of test, as well as the BD type of test. Now, if I scroll down to the bottom, another interesting aspect here is we see that this issue is considered not run. And why is this? This is actually an epic. And if I expand that, I do see that this epic is composed of 4 different stories. And the epic itself is considered in the not run status. Why is that? Because I do have a story which has 2 tests which have not been executed yet. So we also report at the epic level, which is very interesting there. Now, looking at the other type of report, which is our user-defined reports, as I said, these are based on templates. You can create your own. You can grab some from our template library and even modify them. I'm just going to show you a report that I generated a while ago using one of those templates in our template library. This is for a test plan for the same project. It was generated a while ago, and it basically puts out everything that is related to a specific test plan. Uh, this was the execution status when I generated the report. We also have a table here where we see all the tests as well as the executions of those test cases. Remember, these are templates, so if you're not interested in having the signee here, it's just a matter of removing the code snippet from the table. Maybe you do not even want a table and you want this in a bullet form. That's also just a matter of reformatting the template there. This was actually done as an example for a pharmaceutical that required hard copy sign-offs of their tests. And this was quite simple since we just added an approval page at the bottom of the page, and that was sufficient for their needs. They actually went ahead and got this electronically signed afterwards. And if we look at gadgets, let me go back to the Jira environment here and pick out my bookstore gadget here. Well, first of all, we've seen this type of report. This is a gadget that reflects overall test coverage, but here I'm looking at all my projects. This is actually the same gadget as we see here, but here I'm using a Jira filter that is only considering high priority stories. So being able to edit all these gadgets is quite versatile and does allow you to have quite a number of gadgets with different results here. Uh, Overall test results, requirements list and their current execution status, test plans, executions list, test lists, and so forth. Now, very important aspect here is that, as I mentioned in the beginning, Xray issue types are based on Jira issue types. And this allows you to unleash all the power that Jira already provides you with. So for example, here I see that I have 10 tests which are still into the to-do state. If I click there, I actually get taken to a standard Jira filter, which shows me those tests or lists these tests as 10 tests. From here, I can carry out standard Jira operations such as bulk changing them. Maybe I want to reassign them to someone else, or maybe raise the priority or send out notifications stating that these tests have not yet been executed there. We have just scratched the surface of what Xray is all about, but we hope that this overview did provide you with a better understanding of its features and functionality.